So one of Obama's campaign promises was to clean up Washington and, as he put it, stop playing the same old Washington games, but instead change the game. Well, a lot of people interpreted that there's going to be no more corruption. There's going to be some sort of campaign finance reform, some sort of regulation that makes it so that billionaires and corporations don't essentially own our government. Well, turns out President Obama failed miserably on this front because we just got the news today from Politico. He's doing exactly the opposite. Quote, "The White House is set to partially reverse an administration-imposed ban on registered lobbyists serving in government. Lobbyists will be able to serve on more than 1,000 boards, panels, and commissions related to executive branch decision-making. The Obama administration initiated the ban on lobbyists in July of 2010. The reversal calls into question Obama's efforts to combat the influence of K Street. Craig Holman, a lobbyist for the government watchdog group Public Citizen, said, quote, "It really shows the Office of Management and Budget backpedaling on Obama's policies dealing with ethics and lobbying activity." So, to give you some more details as to what exactly happened here, there's a few lobbyists that sued over this, that they weren't able to get certain government positions, and they claimed their constitutional rights were being violated. But they didn't even need to finish the lawsuit because President Obama and the White House caved, and they said, you win, you get to have new seats in over 1,000 boards, panels, and commissions related to executive branch decision-making. Talk to me again, Obama, about how you're the guy that's going to bring us change. I'm really interested in what you have to say. Man, this is fucking depressing. You know, look, we come out here every day. There's some stories where we defend President Obama because there's ridiculous attacks coming from the right wing. And there's other times we go after Obama, whether it's an issue of foreign policy and American imperialism, or it's an issue like this. But the bottom line is, when in total summation, what is President Obama? He's pro-establishment. He's a center-right candidate. At best, he's a centrist. Okay, and very pro-corporatist. He's certainly not a liberal. He's certainly not a progressive. Certainly not a socialist, as some crazy Republicans would claim. And this is yet another example of it right here. The bottom line is that as long as we have a political system where we have unfettered money littered throughout all the different levels of government, well, what's going to happen? That money is going to dictate the decisions that are made. And if the decisions are, well, we actually want to have control and we're going to pay you to step aside and let us, the lobbyists, run the show, that's what's going to happen. And that's what is happening. I mean, did you know, just to give one example, but I could go on and on, when it came to the Dodd-Frank banking reform, okay, so post the Great Recession, we realized, oh my God, we need to do some sort of marketplace regulation and Wall Street regulation. What should we do? Well, they came up with the Dodd-Frank bill. The Dodd-Frank bill at the end was just butchered and so many loopholes to the point where it was absurd. Right? Now, why is that? Because the lobbyists oftentimes had the last say as to what went into the bill. There are some pieces of legislation that are proposed, and some that have even passed, that are purely written by the lobbyists. Okay, did you know that ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is basically the group that makes butt buddies of people in government and people in big business, they have all these bills that they've already written up that they take to state legislatures around the country. They give it to usually Republican leaders, but oftentimes Democrats too, and they say, okay, pass this, just change a few words around. So what they'll do is they'll change a few thes in the bill, and they'll change a few ats, and they'll change a few minor words and maybe restructure a couple sentences, and they'll say, okay, now we're going to pass this bill which, lessens regulation on fracking or whatever. And people look at it, they go, oh my God, you just passed the ALEC bill. That's the lobbyist bill with a few words changed. What are you doing here? And they don't have an answer. Now, why don't they have an answer? Because the reality is they're owned by the corporations. They're owned by the billionaires. They're owned by the lobbyists, the politicians are. So they're always going to do their bidding. See, this is what we mean when we say we don't have a democracy anymore. I mean, the perfect example of it was the study that came out recently that said American public opinion from 1980 and onward has no effect whatsoever on what policies we get implemented. Isn't that incredible? In a democracy, the majority opinion has no say whatsoever. Well, then why are we even bothering to call it a democracy? It's just kabuki theater. It's just a label that we're using and we're not using in the right place. We live in an oligarchy. We live in a kleptocracy or a plutocracy, government of, by, and for the rich. We live under a corporatist system, government of, by, and for the corporations. And I believe it was Benito Mussolini, one of the fathers of fascism himself, that said, well, what fascism actually is when corporations and the government combine. So, at least according to some definitions, America, not only are we not a democracy anymore, we're bordering on a fascist state.